Previously, the continent of Samakphors was divided between 7 kingdoms: Raffle, Ansel, Paradil, Kanship, Schutz, Setz, Mizsan. Over time, the kingdom of Ansel absorbed the rest and became known as the Samakphork Empire. The story begins in the 222nd year of the Samakphork era. People were standing near the flame, and 2 children called to come over. Their relative asked them to say goodbye to their father, because he was a great man and taught them a lot. Ars became the head of the house. We remember the past, when the guy is sitting at the table and typing on a laptop. He came home after work and sat down to play games. When he went outside, his heart gave out and he fell. He is woken up by a girl, and he thinks that this is a hospital, but the room is too old. A white dog was flying in the air and barking. The maid came with dishes, due to which the main character saw himself. In Lamberg, Mizzen province, Ars is born. 3 years later, he was sitting at the table writing when someone brought him tea. Ars realized that he must have died and been reborn. During this time, he learned the language, learned to write and read, and also learned a little about this world. This country had magic, the ability to perform miracles, as if he was in a video game. The family he was born into was aristocratic. They owned a small domain called Lamberg, where about 1,000 people lived. Their mansion was large and beautiful, almost like a palace. There were many servants who looked after them. They had their own cook, so they always ate deliciously. He realized one more thing. He had an ability that others did not have. A boy comes to the guards to watch the training, although he was only 3 years old. His ability is analysis, with which he studied people. For example, he saw that one guy was good at using a bow. He shot a bow, and he succeeded every time. Ars explained that he understood it intuitively, and if he said that he sees people in numbers and understands what their talent is, no one will believe him. The ability was real, though he could not evaluate himself, although he was afraid to see the result. Night falls, and they are served dinner. Father looked angry, and Ars was afraid of him. He was an amazing man. From a peasant he rose to an aristocrat thanks to his exploits, and with his valor he could defeat 10 warriors. Father asked to sharpen his intuition, because one day Ars will become a lord and it is very important for him to know what a person is good for. Ars is given his father's portion so that he can grow up faster. He also continued to study the country and understood something important. His future is far from cloudless. The power of the Samakphork Empire is rotten, and rebellions are breaking out all over the country. To suppress them, local rulers strive for autonomy, but the chaos continues. Ars is afraid that if this continues, the empire will fall apart and a war will break out. If this happens, he will have to lead the local militia. Morning comes, and he thinks if he will be able to protect all the inhabitants of the city, because they were so kind to him, and he wants to protect them so that trouble does not happen. Ars walks around the city, and the inhabitants notice him, because he rarely goes down alone. He went shopping and saw the statistics of people. Sitting on the steps, he gets tired of analyzing, because his eyes are overstrained. A woman throws a man out of the store, because they will not sell him anything. He did not look like a local, and it turned out that he is a Malkan. Malkans are people who came to Samakphorks from another continent, and they are mainly brought as slaves. The protagonist gives him a bun to eat. People start discussing this, because he is a child of an aristocratic family. The guy takes the food and eats, tears begin to flow from his eyes. Ars analyzes the boy and is shocked, because he was the most powerful. Without a single flaw, his abilities are on par with the greatest warriors. In the future, he will certainly inspire fear. Ars asks him to join his army. After all, with the help of analysis, he will find strong people and strengthen the family. The guy thought it was a game. Ars explains that he will think of something. He does not believe and leaves, and the boy begins to shout that they have a good cook and will cook anything. In the end, he agrees and is surprised that Ars did not lie about the Lord's son. Ritz is given terrible food and rejected, because he is not liked. In the end, they bring him the same thing. Ritz used to be in a mercenary squad, but many of them died in the war, and then the squad was disbanded. Then he began to wander until he ended up here. He could not join another squad, because no one would take a small child without merit. He had been in his previous squad from an early age. A man comes up and explains that it is time to say goodbye to the guest. Art says that he brought him to become a valet. The father does not like the idea, because it is unheard of stupidity, and he should be thrown out. The protagonist says that he is gifted, and not making him a valet would be a mistake. The father asks him to listen, because they are inferior in everything and can be gifted. Art says that Ritz has a talent from God, and if the father doubts, then they need to test his abilities. Since Arts insists, the father agrees to test him and take him as a soldier. He needed to defeat Arts' father. Although Ritz was still young, only 14 years old, and his father has a military talent. Arts asks him to follow him. Ritz found it hard to believe in this, because the Malkans were disliked everywhere. The father asks to bring equipment to start the fight. Ritz is ordered to take a training sword. If he hits it with the sword while the sand is pouring, then his father will recognize his victory. Father had the best valor in the country. Raven asks him to show his worth. Ritz is amazed by the strength and speed of Ars's father. He remembers the boy's words for help, and after he falls, he decides to continue. He wants to fight with all his strength, while dodging his attacks and striking with his sword. He touched his father, and he lost. He is taken as a soldier, as promised. Raven said that this boy would become a first-class swordsman. He could become a powerful nobleman, or even an emperor. Ritz was thanked for his help, because he was fed well. He had been living with them for several months. He was released from military service, and now he helps around the house after training. His ingenuity had developed greatly, and now he was one of the smartest. When those around him got to know him better, both his home and city loved him. Ritz told him that it was time to do business. Earlier on the continent of Samicforce there were 7 kingdoms, and then an empire was formed. The kingdom of Ansel received access to the strait, which made it possible to conduct trade outside of Samicforce. Having accumulated enough forces, they invaded the rest of the kingdoms. Having captured them, the king of Ansel declared himself emperor. This happened 203 years ago. Now the Samicfor Empire was going through hard times. Its current ruler, Badras XII, was an 8-year-old child, and his advisors were plotting intrigues. There was no one to govern the country. Uprisings broke out everywhere, so the feudal lords ignored the interests of the empire and collected more and more forces. Arts's father was already being sent to the border skirmishes, but sooner or later a big war was supposed to start. Arts was preparing for it, looking for capable people. Ritz thought that the war would start in Mizzen because the current Duke Amador was old and very ill. Perhaps he would die in the next few years. The Duke had 2 sons. The eldest was supposed to inherit the title, but the younger one was superior to him in everything. The Duke hesitated, not knowing who to give preference to. If he died without making a decision, then a war would certainly start. Even if he chose an heir, it was unlikely that everything would end in peace. Ritz assumed that Art's father would support his eldest son, but it was not up to him to decide. Each duchy was divided into several counties. Raven also served and could help if something happened. Arts was worried because so far he had only been able to recruit one person. Having proven himself in a big war, one could get a title, so they needed to become stronger. They went in search, going out into the street where they saw their father who was training. Raven asked to find a person trained in magic because he himself did not really understand it, and they did not have talents. Once his father gave him a bracelet, and thanks to him he did a little magic, but he didn't get any more of these things. They got to a city where 50,000 people lived because it was the capital. A local lord lived in the castle. There were many rich people in the settlement. The main character used analysis, but they all didn't fit. The characteristics were divided into parameters and abilities. Skill values were defined approximately as a parameter with multiple abilities. That is, even with high parameters, without abilities nothing can be achieved. They walked down the street and saw poor people. Where there is prosperity, there is also a downside. If the city is prosperous, then the gap between rich and poor is bigger. Ritz explained that they can't take everyone, and now it is not in his power. Even in such a busy city, something could be done for such people. He wanted at least one normal person to be found among them. They went to the market, and he was offered a dragon egg for 1 gold. The guy presented him with a knife because the merchant almost gave him a fake. He asked him to listen because trade with the northern continent was interrupted a year ago. If the eggs really are from there, then it is contraband. Such eggs need to be hatched at a high temperature, and the spots on them are not so bright, and in the atlas they were a different size. They were rare, and there were a lot of them in the shop. Everyone was looking at this commotion, and Ritz asked the Lord for forgiveness. They decided to go further, eating near the fountain. They took a lot of tasty food. His wallet was stolen, and they ran after the thief. It was a girl with blue hair. They went to the corner of the street where this girl was beaten. Ars asks not to beat her because she is a girl. They wanted to hit him, but the guy struck first. The others also rushed to the attack but were rebuffed. The girl had good magical abilities, but she did not want to serve. He tries to persuade her, but she still does not like that. The nobles look down on Charlotte, explains that they live well and do not know what it is to suffer from heat and cold when there is no food. She did not want to let him make money on her. Ritz explained that it may be hard for her, but stealing is bad, and those people were accomplices of the slave trader. She was caught when she made her way to the Lord and sold into slavery. She received coins and ran away, but they tracked her down. Apparently they wanted to sell her. Children run up to her because they haven't seen her for 2 days and are hungry. They are street orphans who have nowhere to go, and she couldn't run away, leaving them. He gives Charlotte all the money. Night falls and he is asked to go inside. We are in a fortified city. The girl hasn't cried for a long time, and then she realized that she has no parents. She approached people, but they immediately left when they saw her. Charlotte wanted to ask for food, but they threw her on the ground. Only then did she notice that they were not treating her like a person. She didn't remember why she was born. She was caught by people who had been chasing her for a long time. Charlotte was beaten, but she still didn't cry. The man asked her to protect her face, because there is a buyer. She had a wallet, and she took it, but she is stopped. Ritz bursts in and beats people. Arts ran up to her to calm her down. His name was Albert, and he demanded that she be let go. From the first meeting he could not understand why her eyes were so empty, thought for a long time and guessed that her ambition was at 1. If it was at 1, it meant that she was disappointed in the future. Albert laughs, because she is a slave and has no future. Charlotte did not remember the last time she cried, because tears will not achieve anything and will not survive. At first she stopped dreaming, because fate is decided at birth. Cold looks, insults, beatings, you can ignore them. The girl stole bread, because only weaklings cry, and weaklings die, you need to be strong. Charlotte begins to cry from all this. Albert snaps his fingers, because his patience has snapped. Ritz grabs him by the neck and throws him to the floor, because they have done something terrible. He also deals with the rest of the bandits. Two try to use magic, but they also cannot defeat him. A healthy man comes down the stairs. Ritz warns him to watch his tongue, and he threatens to cut out his tongue. It was too slow, so Ritz strikes. Albert explains that the Duke has authorized the trade. The boy says that if they just take her, their reputation will suffer, and if the slave they wanted to buy disappears, they had better come up with an excuse. If he doesn't like something, they will get rid of him here and now. They are allowed to take Charlotte. She wanted to go somewhere, so they go into the forest. Ars had difficulty breathing, and he was suffocating. They came and looked at the city, which seemed beautiful. From here, everything bad seemed small and insignificant. That's why she sometimes came here to look. Ars wanted to take all the same, because he loved children. When you are tired and sick, a child's smile can give you strength, because children's smiles are full of hope. The children were in good clothes and playing. To dream of something means to look into the future. This joy has great power, and adults also gain strength. The desire to live better or try something new is the energy that drives the city, so he wants to create a place where children can dream. It was the duty of an adult and a ruler. Charlotte liked the answer and is ready to serve them. Ritz puts a bracelet on her so that she can use magic. They began to cast a spell, and she got a shape similar to an explosion. Everyone was surprised, and the girl smiled. Charlotte is explained that servants are given a bed, food, and a little money. She asks to spend her money on the poor. The girl apologizes for stealing from them then. She could not imagine that she would serve someone younger than herself. The most interesting thing was who he would become. Charlotte says goodbye to the children, who are sad and will miss her. She eats unethically and can disgrace the Lord. The father was against women in the war. She creates an explosion, and he immediately accepts her. The father returned home and his son met him. The county of Caney, which borders Lamberg, has a disputed border with the neighboring duchy of City. Father often had to participate in skirmishes, but none of his subjects are depressed by this. Charlotte has been living with them for 3 years. She appeared out of nowhere, but soon began to be feared as the most powerful battle mage. Thanks to Charlotte, the group of magicians became equal to the second trump. The main character got a sister and a brother. They grew up quickly. Ritz comes to the boy and says that apparently a new talent has been found, because recently a family of hunters moved to Lamberg and everyone talks about how strong the older brothers are. They greeted the horse and decided to go to the forest. Charlotte was sitting on a branch and reading a book. She wanted to go with them. The horse was going slowly, and Ritz said that it was all her fault. The two of them argued with each other about which of them should get off the horse. Then they argued because they did not know who would protect the boy. 2 brothers came out, who were hunting a boar. They ran up and asked for forgiveness. Suddenly they got into trouble. While in their house, they are served delicious food. The man apologizes for not being able to offer better. Boars were difficult to catch, but they are very tasty. The Lord's son came to them to take the brothers to serve. Roselle took the bun and didn't even say hello. He had a good mind, level 109. The boy was afraid and started crying, because they wanted to take him away, suck his bones and send him to war. He didn't want to die and ran away from them. The man asked for forgiveness, because he was weak. His mother died 2 years ago, and since then he became more gloomy and locked himself in his room. At his age, they already teach him to chop wood and other things, and this one is not accustomed to ordinary life. Arts explains that he is not fit for war, but his strategy is very good. The boy went to him again and asked for forgiveness. He liked books, but there were no others, and these were read by his mother in the past. Roselle never succeeded in anything, but he can forget about everything bad behind a book. He is offered to go to their library and take any books he wants. Roselle nevertheless agrees to go to them. Entering their house, a dog licks him. They enter an empty building and offer to look at the barracks. The 3 of them go to the library. The boy really likes it, and immediately starts looking around. Ritz stays with him and chooses books. The main character runs to them, because the boy immediately read many books and remembered all the unfamiliar words. His wits grew in a few hours. It was an amazing ability to learn. His brothers come to him, because it was time for them to go home. He learned to read when he remembered how his mother read a book and remembered what was written. That's how he learned to read. The brothers were surprised, because he was 3 years old then. The main character suggests that they use traps, because Rozel's main weapon was his mind, and if he made a trap with it, his father would certainly appreciate it. The brothers encourage him to try, because they will help in any way they can. The father looks at the walls, and then he is asked to look inside. There were many wild boars inside. They fell into Rozel's trap. He had long been thinking about when the brothers' dream would come true and they would go to the army, but he would have to hunt alone. The book said that boars attack everything yellow, so he made a yellow fence to lure them. People would not fall into such a trap, anyone could catch boars with it. They also collected herbs, because the little boars did not like their smell, so he hung bunches to scare away females and cubs. If they were caught, a small hole was made for them. They reproduce quickly, but will still die out if you hunt children. Rosal asked for forgiveness, because he talked too much. His father asked to take the boy with him and take care of him. His mother's health deteriorated after he was born. His father hates him because his mother died because of him, the others thought the same. On the anniversary of her death, he locks himself in a room. He brought his mother to death, not helping her and the family in any way. In front of an open mouth, Rosal cries, remembering his mother. The brothers and father climbed onto the roof and thanked him for the memory. They drank to their mother. The father treated him like that because he failed to notice his talent, and only noticed what he couldn't do. He wanted his son to live in a place where he would be recognized, but he was too kind, like his mother, and instead of his talent, he took care of him. The father wanted him to hate him and leave for a better life, harboring a grudge, and only in this way could he atone for his guilt. He asked Rosal for help, since he had failed, because he was also loved. Morning comes, and they come for them. Rosal decides to go too, and it doesn't matter that they won't meet for a long time. The father passes by them and goes to chop wood. The boy shouts to him that he will never hate him, that he may have been weak, that he couldn't do anything, but that he will learn from ours and will learn a lot of useful things for the village. He asks to live with him again when he learns something new. The father burst into tears, and he will wait for him. The brothers also cry and thank ours. He was glad that he could change their relationship in the family, and they will try their best to become the strongest. Father's health has deteriorated, but he had to go fight in the current situation. A year ago, the Duke of Mizian died of illness, and left a will to his youngest son, but Clen declared it a conspiracy. Everyone considered Clen weaker, but now he is making progress on the battlefield, so many believe that the eldest brother should become lord. Mizian was divided into those who supported the elder and those who supported the younger, split in two. Sites took advantage of this and resumed attacks. The protagonist must also participate in the battle. Everyone was going to Lamberg, although there was a thunderstorm, perhaps the heavens were favorable. The Lord explained that he had more important things to do, or rather, about his bride. It turns out that ours was already engaged, and she sent him a letter. The protagonist runs and asks for help, because a letter from the bride arrived. Charlotte hugs him to her chest, because she thought he would marry her. Someone comes in and says she has arrived. Lisha gets out of the carriage and greets him. She had ambitions at the level of 80, which showed her danger, although outwardly she looked like an angel. Perhaps she wants to seize their domain, and only ours could stop her intrigues. The bodyguard saw the Malcan, which made him very angry. Lisha is surprised, because everyone knew about this guy because of his exploits, and she will not tolerate gossip. The maids come out with a bouquet and greet her. The girl takes the flowers and thanks, because it was very nice. She liked the mansion, because it was well looked after. There was meat on the table, which she liked. Ours had sauce all over his mouth, which the girl noticed. She was sociable, smart, and also polite, and most importantly beautiful, and if not for the skill of assessment, he would definitely fall in love. Lisha asks to show the city, although it is raining. At that very moment it becomes sunny, and she says that it is not magic, but she just saw it in the clouds. Rasa liked the girl, because she held up well, but for some reason he was afraid of her. Charlotte agreed with him, because she was dangerous. The two of them decide to go to the city and walk. Everyone greeted them, because everyone knew about them. They hear the shouts of men, and it turns out that the master furniture maker ordered fire ore, and the merchant brought sound ore. Charlotte comes up to them and wanted to separate them with one spell. Lisha says that this cannot be done, and in general she is her admirer. The girl asks to leave this matter to her, and if it is possible to resolve the dispute, she will fulfill one request. The men have already started fighting because of the quarrel. Lisha approaches them and offers to sell sound ore to the Blade family, because they do not have it in their lands. Products made from it were rare, and they will buy it for more than the market price, and they also mine a lot of fire ore. They are ready to sell the surplus cheaply, and so their dispute will be resolved. The boy asks to conclude contracts, even if it concerns friends. She holds silver coins and was glad that they spent time like this. In the evening, they enjoyed a luxurious dinner, and then Charlotte entertained them, showing beautiful spells. He still could not understand what Lisha was thinking, because she was staying with them until tomorrow, and in the morning she would also have to try hard. Looking under the blanket, he sees a girl who asks him not to scream, because she simply ran away from the room because she wanted to look at his surprised face. But seriously, she came to talk to him. Lisha asked him what he thought of her. His tea spilled from such a question. The girl could tell from a person's facial expression what he was thinking, even if he was hiding his emotions, and when she saw him, she could read distrust in his eyes. She was not surprised, because they saw each other for the first time, but she believed that in a few minutes she could remove suspicions. Ars explains that he has the skill to evaluate people and their abilities. He sees in her a talent for politics and more ambition than others. She was truly ambitious, so she tried to make a man fall in love with her. The best way for a lord is marriage. Lisha understands that he thinks that her family's possessions are really small. If he turned out to be a mediocrity, she would try with all her might to break off the engagement, but after spending that day with him, she wanted to marry him. The girl was sure that his family would prosper. The people of Lambert doted on him, and she saw that they were happy for him as if for themselves, so she thought that the most important ability for a lord is to be loved for who he is. She fell in love with him as much as the people did. After talking to him, Lisha leaves. They both felt ashamed. She had a heart-to-heart talk with someone for the first time. The girl goes back home. The world of aristocrats is full of meanness, and no one is sincere with anyone. Anyone will betray another without thinking for the sake of title and power. The girl hated her abilities because she felt all this. If you marry a noble and influential man, you can get out of the world of mean conspiracies, and when she realized this, her hated abilities became her support. Now she could look at meanness and learn to say things she did not think. She had no interest in betrothal to the petty Leuns. She wanted to join a more noble family, but she decided to make an impression to make friends just in case. Instead, they looked at her with distrust, and no matter how much she smiled, his suspicions grew. Ars brought her salve for her blisters, because he was kind. His subjects treated him like family, and it was a beautiful world. She was drawn to it, and when she decided to be sincere, they listened to her from beginning to end. If his world was destroyed, she would destroy everyone who interfered. They began to correspond by letter. His father's body was very weak, and they should prepare for the worst. The lord was crippled, and the killer fell to the ground. Father said that the duke was killed. They asked Razel what would happen next, and he said that there would be a war, and now they needed to support one of the brothers. Ritzel was asked to make sure that their army was ready to move. The father also wanted to start, but he felt bad and fell on the bed. They give Arts a letter, because in 3 days he is gathering everyone. He decides to go there himself. They decide to go and find out what kind of person he is. The guard stands and is surprised by the magician, as well as the guy. They believed him and took him to the castle itself. He was also nervous. He was greeted by the count's vassal, and his name was Renat. He wishes the lord recovery. He had high parameters, and he coped with everything. He had also heard about the exploits of his companions. The guys did not want to go to serve him. They come to a round table, where 2 men are sitting and are silent. The Baron often played with him when he was still little, and gives him cookies. The Duke of Canary comes to them, who thank them for coming. He sits down at the table. He also had good valor, and if you look closely, his weaknesses are covered by strengths. He asked what had made them travel so far, but after the murder, war was inevitable. When the dispute over the inheritance began, they would support the eldest son, and his opinion would not change. No one objected. Konarski said that rumors had reached him that the Seeds Duchy wanted to use this chance to attack, and therefore they needed to prepare troops to be ready for anything. Ars was very nervous and lay down on the table. Konarski called him, because he had been informed about his father. Also, their house was becoming stronger, and he praised him for being able to come for his father at the age of 11, and he expected a lot from their family. They needed to spend energy on preparations to meet expectations. Baron Heman approached him, because he was the father of his future wife. His daughter was not happy, as if she did not like the correspondence, but he forgot to send the letter, because her father was ill. Because of him, the girl had to endure a lot. Veda was smart beyond her years, and he took advantage of this, did not care about her at all, thought only about politics, war, ignored her. All these ugly disputes between the nobles, and she could not help but notice them, and that is why she wants the girl to be happy, and he was also to blame for this, but he saw it and could not hold back his anger. He agreed to the engagement, because his father was strong. The protagonist will do everything to make her happy. Initially he was scared, but it is clear how worried he is about Lisha. He sits next to his father and talks about the negotiations. He did not expect that his son would go without asking. Initially he considered him a child, but he did an excellent job. Arts wrote her a letter and asked for forgiveness, because a lot had happened, and he could not answer, and also the other day he met her father. The situation was difficult, and therefore one could hope that their families would overcome it. Arts had been training since the morning and did not want to rest. Everyone was training and getting stronger, but he was not developing at all. Recently he commanded an army in a mock battle, but lost miserably, because he lacks combat experience, and every time he gets scared, seeing the attacking warriors. In a real battle they will be covered, but if you do not hold on confidently, then everyone will be in trouble. Razel runs up to him, because one of the dukes sent a detachment, and it was necessary to urgently move the troops to meet them. There were few places at sites for the first attack, but this also applies to them. If the barony is captured, then it will be very easy to get to them. Ars orders to gather a detachment, and Ritz will be nearby at any moment. The father comes when the boy is giving a speech. He decides to move himself, because he is too young, and will be glad to die on the battlefield. They bring a prisoner, because he killed, raped, robbed, and in general, there are many serious crimes on his account, and because of his illness, the execution was postponed. The boy is told to look at this, because this will decide his fate whether he will lead the army. The prisoner screams that he loved killing little kids like him. They cut off his head, and his eyes begin to tremble with fear. The reaction to this was normal the first time, and he had the same, but he could not lead the army. 3 guys also go with him to the battlefield. The boy is left alone with his problem, because he does not understand anything and was not ready for this. We are on the front line, where everyone was fighting and trying to win. Razel commanded people to go where he said. The girl created balls and blew people up. His father was bleeding from the mouth, but he still fought. The enemy army was 1.5 times larger than the Canary army, but the heroism of Lowen's team allowed them to defeat the enemies. The father sits on his horse and falls. The siege lasted a whole month, and the army returned 4 days after his 12th birthday. The guys are standing near the door and are surprised that he has a bandage on his face from training. The father fought heroically, but as soon as the battle was over, he fell ill from exhaustion. He was already very ill, and then the long battles took their toll. Ars went back to training, although it was already late. Charlotte asked others about the boy, and she was told that he trained every day like crazy, and it was not enough for him to exhaust himself. Lisha came to their house in the middle of the night, because she should have known what happened to Ars, because at first the letters were nice, but with the beginning of the war they began to scare. They told her everything, because Ars was worried about the fact that he was too cowardly, and could not go to war, and feels remorse that Lord Raven's condition has sharply worsened. She decides to go to him, and watch him train. The protagonist falls, but decides to continue training, because his father was in the same condition, and he does not yet have the necessary strength to protect everyone. The girl decides not to stop him, let him train. It is difficult for him as it is. The maid comes running, because the Lord has come to his senses and wants to talk to the guys first. He called them because he wanted to tell them that he was going to die soon and that he knew better than them what was happening to him, and wanted to talk while he could. He was very surprised when Ars brought them here, and it didn't matter what race they were, how old they were, or what gender they were, because they were a reliable support for them. Raven was proud of him, and he had a request for them to support his son because he was a good judge of people. Everyone loved him, and they were proof of that. Razel was crying because he had made peace with his family because of Lord Ars, because he had helped him become more confident. Charlotte didn't understand the baronial affairs, but she liked the future he was striving for, gaining meaning in life, and she wouldn't listen to anyone else without asking. Ritz agreed because if someone stood in Ars's way, they would fight even if they were alone, and he swore that he would protect him. They thanked the Lord for taking them under his reliable wing. Razel came to him to talk. When he first saw her, he was surprised at how mature she acted while the other child cried. He quickly realized that the girl was kind, and that she should be like that with Ars. Razel cries and tells him that his son is trying to become like him. Ritz hits the wall and cries, because it was painful for him to realize all this. The son comes to his father, who brought different potions to try on him. Raven interrupts him, because the son has grown up so much, and when he decided to become a soldier, he was the same age. He was not born in this city, but in a small village on the outskirts of Messiaen. The local baron was a scoundrel who took excessive taxes, and his subjects had to live in complete poverty. His father could not stand it, and at the age of 10 he ran away from the village to the city, as it turned out that the Duke of Messiaen was visiting the city that day. He did not remember that day well, but one thing stuck in his head: he liked the grandeur and its appearance, which made him dream. After that, he learned to use a sword on his own and became a soldier, and fought like crazy, served long enough to become a count, and before he knew it, he became a baron. He gave his life to protect the city. After these words, he begins to cough, and also asks not to blame himself for his illness. His father leaves everything to him, and asks not to let him down. Ars was happy to be his son. Lisha met her father at the age of 16, when they had to have a mock fight. After that, they talked all night long. And the next morning, his father passed away. The guy asked to say goodbye to his father and laid a flower. Tears flow from his eyes, because he was a great man and taught him a lot, and yesterday he talked to him about a lot, and he gave Lamberg. He swears that he will protect everyone instead of him and asks for help in this. People shout that they will do everything for him. Charlotte remembers how her hat fell, and Raven picked it up, asking her to rest. Razel also remembers how he sat with books, and they came up to him and gave him a cape so that he would not overwork himself. Everyone knelt down after all. This is how the legend of their family began. Ars comes to his father's grave, because 3 months have passed since he left them. The main character has not yet gotten used to the position of a baron, but the vassals help him with advice and deeds, every day teaching him the intricacies of managing the lands. Every morning he wakes up with the heavy thought that now the fate of the entire barony lies on his young shoulders. His faithful friends Roselle, Ritz and Charlotte come to him, because it is time to leave for an important meeting in the neighboring county, where the fate of the upcoming war is being decided. At the round table in the ancient oak hall of the castle, decorated with family coats of arms, sit venerable men, elders and military leaders. They pray for the soul of Father Ars, fingering the rosary and bowing their grey heads low. He will be the new baron, although inexperienced in political games, but in a firm, trembling with excitement voice promises to do his duty until his last breath. Between Lord Maple and Lord Basemark, two rival brothers, a fragile truce has been in effect until now, but now they openly began to gather troops across their lands, preparing for a decisive battle. Minos, the wise old advisor, bending over the map, explains the current situation. The capital of the Duchy of Meissen, the majestic Arkentis, remains under the control of Basemark, the younger brother, who indeed has more fertile lands and, accordingly, recruits for the army. However, the elder brother clan holds in his hands the key trading city with its rich markets and merchant guilds. They have almost equal economic advantages. The balance of power is approximately equal, which means that the outcome of this bloody feud now depends solely on the position of the neighboring rulers, whose lands surround the warring duchies. Lord Clen has already sent his ambassadors, trying to pull the western county of Plana to his side, but the local stubborn nobles once again proudly refuse to join him, despite all the promises and threats. This small but proud county with an equally small but battle-hardened army occupies a strategically important position. The shortest and most convenient route to Arkentis lies through Plana, through its mountain passes and bridges. That is, if they lose this territory or allow it to go over to the enemy, they will not be able to create reliable supply lines for their army and will almost certainly lose this protracted battle for the inheritance. They hope that Plana would become their ally without unnecessary bloodshed, but the categorical refusal of the local lord leaves them no choice. Now they will have to take the rebellious county by storm, losing precious time and soldiers. Ars, having listened carefully to all the arguments, suddenly offers to conduct another round of negotiations himself, because he has matured a risky but potentially effective plan. Rosal, crossing his arms over his chest, expresses his doubts. He finds all this extremely suspicious, because they will surely lose the first battle in such a situation, and it is strange that the proud captive nobles do not agree to favorable conditions, as if they are hiding something or waiting for someone. If they attack blindly, without reconnaissance, they can run into unexpectedly strong resistance, so first they need to carefully study the situation and send scouts. The chief military commander, scratching his grey beard, after some thought allows Arts to try his luck and gives him one last chance to prove himself as a diplomat, but warns that in case of failure he will have to act harshly and quickly. They set out at dawn, walking along a dusty road among endless fields, and Ars is very nervous, over and over again going over the possible developments in his head. At this time, familiar children come to Charlotte's modest living room, whom she used to feed in difficult times. Now they have been accepted by a new orphanage, which Ars built with his own money in memory of his mother. The workers' good-natured women in grey dresses collect many children from all over the city who were left without parents after the recent unrest. Many of the wards have already decided on their future. Someone proudly tells that he got a job as an apprentice in a bakery where it smells of cinnamon and fresh bread. Someone will work on fertile farmland under the warm sun. And the most desperate boys dream of getting into a military unit to become as strong as the brave soldiers they see on the streets. They all finally started living the way they wanted, not the way cruel fate dictated. It really was better for them to stay in the big city, because there were incomparably more opportunities here, and they would be able to build with their own hands the future they dreamed of on cold nights on the streets. In the midst of this excitement, Licia unexpectedly arrives, having come with her father to the castle on business, and, having learned that Ars is here, immediately hurries to him, not paying attention to the smirks of the maids. Ars, taken by surprise, fidgets in confusion, because he was not at all prepared for this meeting and does not know how to behave. In his last letter he promised to come, but was never able to due to the sudden death of his father. Little children happily grab her by the expensive dress with dirty hands, and she, laughing, takes off her elegant shoes to play with them in the garden, not afraid to stain her silk stockings. The guy involuntarily smiles as always. He likes her simple, relaxed character, so contrasting with the primness of the local noblewomen. When night falls and most of the castle's inhabitants are already asleep, Ars gathers his close friends in his room and shares disturbing news. According to his information, someone is trying to contact the mysterious mercenaries from the Shadow organization, and if they can organize a secret meeting, he wants to personally give them a special task. They decide to take the girl on this dangerous mission too, and she stays overnight in the orphanage, since it is too late to return to the castle. She insists on sleeping in the same room with Ars, like in the old days, which causes gossip among the maids. When Ritz comes in with another report, he freezes on the threshold in amazement. A real battle is unfolding in front of him, where two young ladies cannot share Ars, hotly arguing over who will get the place next to him. In the end, after much wrangling, Charlotte with a disgruntled grimace agrees to sleep in the next room with Rosal, grumbling something about Stupid noble ceremonies. As it turns out in the morning, the girls slept well, comfortably settled on soft feather beds. When the first rays of the sun break through the shutters, the girls are already on their feet, cheerful and fresh, while Russell and Ritz yawn, rubbing their numb backs. Everyone remembers how Charlotte waved her arms in her sleep and hit Russell in the side with her elbows several times, causing him to scream and wake up completely. Having thanked the hosts for their hospitality, the detachment gets ready to set off. A long road and dangerous encounters lie ahead. Ritz, thanks to his old connections in criminal circles, managed to get in touch with the right people through an acquaintance from the Bloody Blades bandit squad. Of course, not everyone agreed to cooperate, fearing revenge, but some still provided valuable information for a good reward. He learned that the Shadow really did have a new leader now. The organization is led by someone young and ruthless, who has completely restructured the work of the network. The new Shadow fighters, according to rumors, are significantly superior to the previous ones in both skill and cruelty. There are also strange whispers that the new leader takes on only particularly interesting, unusual tasks, and no mere mortal knows what exactly might interest this mysterious character. They go into a dirty, beer and sweat-smelling bar called Drunken Boar, on the outskirts of the city, where among the noisy crowd they find a free table in the corner, littered with scraps and empty mugs. Everyone is very hungry after the long journey, but they have to wait for the food, and in the meantime, Charlotte in her short dress is already being stared at by local drunks, exchanging dirty jokes. Arts notices that someone in the crowd is clearly watching them too closely, but pretends not to notice. When the waitress approaches their table, a tall girl with unnaturally regular features, he orders orange juice, and suddenly his face changes dramatically, becoming pale. Under the pretext of needing to leave, Arts heads to the restroom, but on the way he is stopped by a chilling thought. After all, that girl had simply incredible, superhuman characteristics, and her voice sounded suspiciously low for a woman. Before he can take a step, a cold knife blade is held to his city, and an invisible person in the semi-darkness forcibly takes him into a back room full of barrels of wine. Fortunately, Ritz, sensing something is wrong, quickly bursts in after them and knocks the weapon out of the attacker's hand with a deft blow. Soon, Razel appears, who, after a short negotiation, explains that in exchange for moral damage and wasted nerves, the attacker must complete one task for them, and without unnecessary killing. Charlotte, her eyes sparkling, adds that she is damn angry at this guy, and if he harms Arts in any way, she will personally find him and slowly stab him with the dullest spoon she can find in the kitchen. After a long pause, the girl reluctantly agrees, having received a heavy gold coin as an advance. Arts, with trembling hands adjusting his collar, explains the situation. It turns out that he has a rare gift. He sees the true characteristics of people, like in old chivalric novels, and this is what saved him. The attacker introduces himself as Pham, an experienced shapeshifter and spy working for both sides. He agrees to cooperate, since he really does not want to die in this stinking basement. Pham confirms that he could have found out the information they needed, but for a full investigation he will need 5 days and 2 more gold as a final payment. Charlotte eats everything in sight, and if there is no food left for someone, they will order more. The guys come to them and tell them about what happened. The girl serves them pancakes with butter at the house's expense. The guys come to Pham, and he sent them all on missions. He carried out their mission himself and successfully dealt with it. The investigation was successful, and we learned the reason why the county of Plana does not support Clen. Pham brought something interesting in agreement with the signatures and seals of the nobles who joined the Lord. Among them was the seal of the county of Massa, which is located on the western border and has a large population, as well as one of the largest armies on the continent, comparable in size to the army of Contes. Supporting Massa for either side will radically change the balance of power. It would seem that Massa, like them, supports Lord Clen, but their seal is here. If the contract is genuine, it means that the county of Massa has betrayed them. If they attack Plen now, Massa will strike them in the back, break through the encirclement, and then they will be caught in pincers at best. They will lose the battle. After that, the situation will change dramatically in favor of Basilmac, and apparently Plen decided that if they side with Clen, they will lose. They did not take money from them, because Pham treated them badly last time. They go to the man and show a document that was kept in the castle of Count Plensky. If the contract is genuine, then taking Plen will be even more difficult. They decide to send this contract to the targetist. He thanks them, because they could have suffered much more damage. Ars says that the head of the mercenaries helped them. An assistant comes up and says that he is confused by the signature, and it is better to follow him. If you look at the other contract, they should have a circle drawn from a hexagon, and a 5-pointed star inside this circle. At first glance, the seals seem the same, but the circle looks a little different, and the signature is also different. It seems to him that this is a fake seal. Ars did not know that the guy had such abilities, because he had not seen them before. Such a deception was needed to gain time. If they get to Plana, they will fight back, but they still have the advantage. The enemy needed Plana to be on their side. The man realized that their target is explosive magic, or a very rare type that is mined in Plana only in Mysiana, and in all of Samicforce in only 4 places. Processed explosive ore allows the use of destructive magic and is the material for powerful weapons. Plana is held in order to extract as much ore as possible. Now the option of attacking is completely eliminated. Razel explains that Plana had to be on their side. The conflict will drain their strength and play into Bazimark's hands. There was only one way out to convey the truth. Ars comes with a contract and says that Lambert wants to join the army of Lord Bazimark. The man decides to tell the Lord everything and will be glad to see him in their ranks. He realized that the boy deceived him and pretended to be an ally in order to meet. They decided to take him into custody, but then Ritz intervened, stopping the guards. Graf Sky takes off his cloak, and everyone is surprised by his presence. They are standing at the table, and Rosal had a proposal. They need proof that the treaty is fake. They are standing near the man, and he says that he did not sign it, and it is a fake. Ars wanted to get into Plen by pretending to be a defector. He will not forgive the fact that his seal was forged, and therefore he will go personally. Plensky was shocked, because he was deceived, but he had already opposed him once. He could not be such a simpleton, and Graf Sky had a large population and he could not lose. The decision was entrusted to the main character, and he agrees that he was careless. But everyone makes mistakes, and does not want to refuse, so he is ready to welcome him into his ranks. Ars stands near his father's grave and tells everything that happened during this time. After all, it was revealed that they were mining explosive ore and really were a dangerous enemy. He thanks them for their help, because they helped him a lot. The carriage arrived at the grave, and Count Rumor came to say goodbye to him, because Lord Klen wants to see him. They are going to him now, although the guys did not quite agree. Charlotte spent a long time and carefully choosing her outfit for the dinner party, sorting through one dress after another, trying on jewelry and accessories, trying to look perfect. But her perfectionism played a cruel joke on her while she was hesitating between a dark silk dress and an outfit in pastel colors. All the other guests had already left, leaving her alone in an empty house, where only the echo of her steps broke the silence. Ritz, always practical and reasonable, sternly said that it was impossible to leave the house unattended, especially in such troubled times, when every corner could hide danger, and therefore it was better for her to stay at home, where she would be safe, and they would definitely bring her souvenirs from the trip to somehow brighten up her loneliness. Lord Maple, a tall, handsome man with a penetrating gaze that seemed capable of penetrating the deepest thoughts of his interlocutor, was one of the leading candidates for the title of Duke of Messiaen, and his influence was growing every day, like a shadow at sunset. Ritz, being well informed, had heard that the reception would be attended by the barons of the lands that formerly belonged to Maple, their holdings stretching far beyond the horizon, as well as other noble lords whose decisions, like drops of water, could change the balance of power in the region, creating new currents in politics. Perhaps he wanted to gather everyone together to raise the morale of his supporters, which had recently been noticeably shaken, and enlist their support for the coming trials that could determine the fate of the entire duchy. Arts, a young but already proven diplomat, whose successes did not go unnoticed, was reminded to be a worthy representative of his house, after which he was formally introduced to the assembled, and at that moment he felt the weight of responsibility fall on his shoulders. From the carved oak door, decorated with the coats of arms of ancient families, a tall man with a commanding bearing emerged. It was Klen himself, and it immediately became clear why Lumer, known for his insight, which allowed him to see through people, decided to support him and not someone else. He thanked everyone who had found the time to come, his voice confident and warm, and began his speech, saying that after the death of his father, who had been a support for many, the Duchy of Messiah found itself in an extremely dangerous situation, because his own brother, contrary to the law and all moral standards, declared war on him, disputing the rights of the legitimate heir, as if forgetting about blood ties. Unfortunately, even in the face of such a serious threat, which could escalate into a full-scale war, the Zamikfor Empire, once powerful and influential, whose army struck fear into the hearts of its enemies, was not going to interfere in the conflict, preferring to remain on the sidelines. Over the 200 years of its rule, the power of the empire had decomposed, losing its former strength, and now its restoration seemed impossible, like an attempt to collect a broken jug, the fragments of which had long been lost in the sands of time. Klen continued, reminding that in all times great changes, like storms, brought both the death of the old order and the revival of the new, and now they stood on the threshold of such an era when it was decided what the future would be. He vowed to put an end to the country that had become only a monument of the past, where everyone lived with memories of past greatness, and to build on its ruins a new, strong state that would be able to withstand any threats. His goal was clear: to win the war that seemed inevitable, and to turn the Duchy of Messiah into the Kingdom of Messiaen, so that his name would forever remain in the annals of history. Winning the war and building a kingdom were not easy tasks. They required not only strength but also wisdom, and Klen expressed firm faith in the abilities of his people, declaring that victory would certainly be theirs if they united their efforts. He then asked Arsa to step forward, and when he did, all eyes turned to him, and he thanked him publicly, noting that the boy had managed to bring Plen back to the Allies without spilling a drop of blood, proving that age was of no importance when it came to talent and diplomacy, which were sometimes more important than brute force. The tables were filled with delicious food, with delicious aromas mingling in the air, and the guests were happily sampling the dishes they particularly liked, enjoying a moment of peace before the coming storms. However, the protagonist, despite the festive atmosphere that reigned around him, was sad. His thoughts were far away, and he decided to go out for some fresh air, especially since the Lord had yet to master the intricacies of court etiquette, which could be more difficult than any battle. Maple himself approached him. His steps were as silent as a cat, wanting to chat a little in an informal setting where he could talk without regard for conventions. He praised him, remembering how Loomer had spoken of his successes, noting that he quickly achieved his goals, as if fate itself favored him. Ars meanwhile looked at Clen's subjects, his gaze sliding over their faces, but there was not a single outstanding personality among them, and he involuntarily compared them with his vassals, who seemed much more capable, ready to follow him through fire and water. Clen only laughed. His laughter was sincere, appreciating the honesty of the interlocutor, and admitted that his people, although ambitious and diligent, but their abilities left much to be desired, like a sword that had not been sharpened for a long time. With such subordinates, whose shortcomings could become fatal, it would be extremely difficult to win the war, especially considering that among their opponents there were many smart commanders whose names inspired respect. The enemy may have more money and soldiers, their ranks may seem invincible, but if they are poorly managed, all advantages are worthless, like a precious stone in the hands of an ignoramus. That is why Clen was so happy. His eyes shone with genuine joy, upon learning of Ars's success, because now he had allies who were truly trustworthy, on whom he could rely in difficult times. As a sign of gratitude that overflowed his heart, he promised that if Ars brought him victory, he would receive the title of Count of Canary, which opened up new horizons for him. He also asked him to look for capable vassals whose skills could strengthen their positions so that they could move towards a common goal together. Ars understood that he could not let him down, because not only his fate depended on it, but also the future of many people. But the situation was complicated by the fact that someone had revealed their plans for using captivity, and now everything could go wrong. This was an unfortunate setback that hit their plans hard, because now they could not sow discord in the ranks of Maple, but this was only a minor difficulty that could be dealt with. They already had enough magic, or its reserves could provide them for a long time, but they lacked good commanders, and this gap needed to be filled urgently. The man, accustomed to acting reliably, his decisions were always balanced, entered the battle only when the probability of victory was 100%, and now he had to reconsider the strategy in order not to make mistakes. Meanwhile, Charlotte finally received the promised souvenirs, which were supposed to console her, and at the same time they informed her that Clen wanted them to participate in the discussion of further strategy, where every voice could be important. He also asked for their help in finding capable subjects who could strengthen their ranks, because one in the field is not a warrior, and together they could move mountains. Ritz suggested entrusting this work to the Shadows, whose networks extended far, because they could have valuable information about talented, but still unknown warriors, whose names were not yet thundering throughout the world. They went to Pham, a local informant whose connections could help in this matter, who, as they knew, could recommend several suitable candidates ready to serve for an idea or gold. Charlotte, however, skeptically noted that Pham would most likely bring some scumbags, people with a dark past, and they were wasting time that could be spent more usefully. At that moment, someone suddenly kicked the protagonist hard. The blow was so unexpected that he fell to the ground without having time to understand what happened, and everything around immediately became quiet. A young girl approached Foma, her eyes glowed with determination, who was looking for a job, ready to take on any task, just not to end up on the street. Mira had very good characteristics in many ways. Her analytical mind allowed her to quickly assess the situation, her physical fitness surpassed many experienced warriors, and her intuition rarely failed in difficult circumstances, and her ingenuity was greater than that of Rosal, who, although he had academic knowledge, often got lost in non-standard situations, and her ambitions were worth a fortune. Because she dreamed of not just a place at court, but of real influence and the ability to change her destiny. The protagonist knows her name, because she worked for her grandfather, that same old lord, whose name was still pronounced with respect in these parts, and whose management methods were legendary. Ritz said that he could not become a vassal. His voice sounded categorical, because there was a bad reputation. There were rumors about her unreliability. She was an advisor to the Duke, held a high position at court, but according to rumors, she was kicked out under very dubious circumstances, which they preferred not to spread. But the most important thing is that she has a younger brother, Thomas, with whom they had a difficult relationship, the right hand of Lord Bisermark, one of their most dangerous opponents, which means he is their enemy by definition. He was a famous general, whose name thundered on all battlefields, who surpasses his sister not only in military affairs, but also in political intrigue, and Mira can be in cahoots with him, using her position to pass information. The girl laughs. Her laughter sounded sincere and a little cynical, because they can't stand each other since childhood, when they were constantly competing for their parents' attention, and she didn't know that she was working for that man, being sure that she was serving a completely different master. Ars hires her, despite all the warnings, because she has outstanding abilities that immediately catch the eye of an experienced eye, and his personal reputation vouches for this, putting his name on the line. Ritz comes running, his face expressing extreme irritation, because he no longer has the strength to tolerate her antics and believes that Mira is not fit to be a vassal, citing compelling arguments, because she fell asleep during the day at her place of work, which is completely unacceptable for a warrior of her rank. They complain in the barracks, their voices are full of indignation. That she is very reluctant to train soldiers, openly sabotaging the training process, and also talks complete nonsense, whose theories contradict all the foundations of military science. Razel also runs up, his young face expressing resentment, and does not want to learn from her, arguing that she asked him to stop reading the books on tactics that he loved so much, and sent him to run around the parade ground, because he had to find meaning in this exhausting process himself, without any explanation. Explosions occur near the house, the roar is carried far around, all the people run out of the rooms in full combat readiness, grabbing weapons and taking up defensive positions. Mira and Charlotte were blowing something up, their faces were smeared with soot, because they were testing a new type of magic, not having properly calculated the force of impact. The warriors spoke, their voices sounded reproachful, that in carelessness there had to be a limit, and one had to be smarter, especially when it came to such dangerous experiments. Mira explained, throwing up her hands, that at her age it was hard to change, habits were too deeply rooted to be gotten rid of so easily. She didn't want to leave here. Her eyes showed genuine affection for this place, because no one had ever taken her so seriously, had never seen her as anything more than just a problem soldier. She suggested a training fight. Her eyes lit up with excitement, and Ritz, after some thought, agreed to the fight, seeing in it an opportunity to prove his case. The protagonist stood in front of the people gathered on the parade ground. When he noticed that his beloved had also come to watch, her figure stood out among the crowd. He explains, his voice sounded clear and distinct, that the training fight will be held between two teams. For this they chose the eastern forest, where the terrain allowed them to test not only strength but also wits. They had to cope before sunset, when visibility would deteriorate, and whoever killed more people, that team would win, receiving certain privileges. For training, they were given wooden swords, specially treated to leave marks when struck, and if they touched the shoulder or head, they were considered instantly killed and could no longer participate in the fight, going beyond the field. Magic could not be used to avoid accidental injuries, but he gave her potions that could temporarily enhance physical abilities. In the end, the teams did not have an equal number of people, which caused murmurs among the spectators. One had Mira with Ars, and the other had everyone else, including the most experienced fighters. The girl didn't care at all how much better it would be. Her indifference to formalities irritated those around her, and the boy was indignant, crossing his arms over his chest, because she had dragged a mug of alcohol and was drinking again right before the start of an important event. All the warriors looked at the main character suspiciously, whispering among themselves, because the girl, as always, was breaking everything, not taking into account any rules. People were collecting various boxes and bags with equipment, preparing for the start of the competition, checking the gear. People from noble families were watching from above. Their outfits stood out among the simple clothes of the warriors, and his relatives, standing separately, sincerely wished him luck, believing in his success. Rosa wanted to win. His youthful maximalism was manifested in everything, because they have very strange women, as he put it, glancing at Charlotte and Mira, and if another one is added, then it will be a horror, and discipline will finally collapse. Myra's team was all newbies, inexperienced and unsure of themselves, except for the main character, who alone could compete with experienced fighters. The girl liked Ritz, she did not hide it, because he trained very well, his movements were honed to perfection. Charlotte could clear the battlefield alone, using her unique abilities. Mira told the newbies, gathering them in a circle, that if they fought as is customary, following standard schemes, then they definitely would not win against superior forces. People shouted, interrupting her, that it was possible not to say this and they themselves knew the basics of tactics, but their voices sounded uncertain. She spoke, ignoring the objections that they would win anyway. Despite all the forecasts, nothing can be done about the difference in combat power. It is a fact, but there are many strategies and the fact that the enemy is physically strong, that they act in a disorganized manner, without a single plan, and it seems that all of these are disadvantages, but on the other hand, these are opportunities that can be used. She does not care if they hate her, she shrugged her shoulders. The task of a commander is to win at any cost, and not to be loved by subordinates. Popularity does not bring victory on the battlefield. Ritz decides to approve the plan of action, gathering his team, because they cannot be defeated by conventional means. They need to be ready for any surprises, for ambushes in the thick of the forest or attacks with projectiles from cover, and therefore they will attack them head-on, using their numbers. Their team will split into 2 detachments on his order, and one of them will go first, as a strike group, and the second will go at a distance from them, preparing to support at the right moment. If they were ambushed by Mira, which was likely, they could signal with smoke or sound and then come quickly, not giving the enemy a chance to develop their success. Ritz says, addressing everyone, that first they need to know the enemy's formation, reconnoiter their positions before they act. Someone fell into their trap, a cry was heard, and they ran there, breaking the original plan. In the bush stood a guy who looked scared, and he asked to go over to their side, telling them their plan in exchange for safety. The plan was this, as he explained breathlessly. Mira supposed they would split the army in half. She would shout that they were attacked by real enemies, feigning panic, and lure them into a trap where an unpleasant surprise awaits them. Then she would set an ambush for those who came to help, and hit the general in the attack when he was most vulnerable. The boy admits, lowering his head, that it is a lie, part of the disinformation, and tells the truth, because he hates Mira for her arrogant attitude. He is going to betray her completely and tell her the real plan, which is much more insidious. He asks them to pretend that they have fallen into a trap, to expose them. Ritz realized, looking closely at his face, that he was deceiving him, noticing the inconsistencies in the story, and also carried 2 magic catalysts with him, which contradicted his words about peaceful intentions. His group is behind the other, hiding in the bushes, and he makes his way to them, trying not to make noise. They attack them, deciding to act first, but they turned out to be dummies, cleverly made of branches and rags. The 3 of them are standing, back to back, and he played his role well, Ritz admitted, because if he kills the general, everything will end in a quick victory. The girl ran along with the boy, laughing, because they decided to play tag, turning a serious exercise into a game, which is typical of their unconventional approach. The boys were next to them, but suddenly began to fall too early to rejoice in their imaginary victory, not noticing the catch. Their legs buckled, and their faces distorted in surprise when the ground went out from under their feet. Ritz, seized with rage, rushed after them in pursuit, his face red with anger, and his eyes flashed lightning. Each of his steps left a deep mark in the ground, as if the earth itself was shaking from his rage. Mira, without losing a second, deftly threw thunder potions at the opponents, which exploded with a roar in front of the runners, blinding them with flashes and deafening with thunderclaps. The enemies waved their arms in panic, trying to protect themselves from the invisible threat, and then scattered, pushing each other. The people standing on the hill looked at each other in confusion. Looking around helplessly, they had been confident of their superiority just a few minutes ago, and now they could not understand where the cunning army of ours was hiding, which had just been under their noses. Charlotte and Rosal meanwhile walked slowly along a narrow forest path, as if they were on a peaceful walk, and not on a battlefield. Their calm, measured steps, even breathing and relaxed posture contrasted sharply with the general atmosphere of tension that reigned around. They exchanged insignificant phrases, as if discussing the weather, and not battle tactics. In the dense bushes near the path, the newcomers hid. Their palms were damp with excitement, and their hearts were pounding so loudly that it seemed they could be heard 10 steps away. When the signal sounded, their young faces were distorted with determination. After all, before the battle, their older comrades had openly told them that they had been thrown into this detachment precisely because they were weaker than the others. These words burned their souls, forcing them to clench their teeth until they crunched, and the fire of rage lit up in their eyes. Now they had to prove to everyone what they were capable of, to show these arrogant ones where the crayfish spend the winter. Even if for this they had to climb into the thick of the fight, and risk their still fragile lives. When the command was given, a whole crowd of inspired fighters burst out of the bushes. There were significantly more of them than the enemy expected. With wild cries, waving swords and spears, they rushed into the attack, their battle cry carried throughout the forest, frightening the birds, which noisily soared into the sky. Mira, instantly assessing the situation, understood the enemy's cunning plan. They divided her army into 2 parts, trying to defeat them one by one. Charlotte and Rosal, quickly getting their bearings, realized that they would not be able to withstand such a large number of enemies in an open battle, and ran away, their cloaks fluttering behind them like the wings of frightened birds. The newcomers, following a pre-thought-out plan, rushed after the fleeing ones in order to distract attention and gain precious time for the main forces. Mira mentally thanked one of the scout girls for the timely sound signal. Now she knew exactly where their squad was and how best to coordinate the attack. However, fortune in war is a fickle lady. The next moment Charlotte stumbled, and the enemy's dexterous hands grabbed her, squeezing her wrists tightly. But Rosal, deftly dodging several attempts to grab him, managed to break free and continue to flee, his blonde hair flashing between the trees. His beloved, already captured, suddenly realized that everything was going according to some strange, but clearly well-thought-out scenario, and at the same moment Myra's true plan dawned on her. This whole commotion was a carefully planned operation. Ritz, meanwhile, was getting angrier. Every vein in his neck was swollen with tension, and his eyes were shooting sparks. He categorically did not want Mira to come near him, as if he felt some special threat in her. Mira, feeling the tension growing, shouted loudly to her fighters, "Hold on tight!" and her voice, full of unshakable confidence, gave them strength. But the enemy was not going to give up either. Seeing that their plan was starting to fail, they sped up, running with all their might, increasing the pace with each step. Their breathing became heavy and intermittent from the effort. Ars, realizing that the situation was becoming critical, without thinking through several smoke bombs at the advancing enemy, mentally apologizing to his own people for such a harsh method, but war is war. Lisha, watching what was happening from the side, could not stand it, and came closer to see everything in detail. Her eyes narrowed in concentration. At this decisive moment, Mira, using a moment of confusion, struck Razel with a sharp blow of the flat side of the sword. Victory was hers. And what is most surprising, she hardly strained herself, acted easily and confidently, despite the obvious numerical superiority of the enemy forces. Her team, seeing this, burst into jubilant cries. The fighters hugged each other, clapped on the shoulders, their faces shone with joy and relief. Ritz, turning to his battered men, said in a voice hoarse with fatigue that war does not ask whether forces are equal or not. His words hung in the air, making everyone think. He was breathing heavily, wiping sweat from his forehead, but in his eyes there was an unwavering determination to continue the fight, no matter what.